Hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new edition of the WION VOA Co-Production. I'm Molly Gambhir. The world is grappling with rising energy prices and energy shortages. This issue was in focus at the COP26 summit in Glasgow. Before we delve deeper, let's first understand the challenges involved. Our broadcast partner, Voice of America, getting us this special report on our reliance on fossil fuels. VOA's Jessica Stone getting us this report from Washington.
Global fuel shortages are hitting consumer wallets with higher gasoline prices.
It is actually, it's a really big problem because, gas prices like about $4 now.
Meanwhile, the world's largest carbon emitter, China, is increasing coal production to provide heat this winter.
High energy prices only reinforce the urgent need to diversify sources, double down on clean energy development, and adapt promising new clean energy technologies.
But U.S. President Joe Biden's optimistic view at the United Nations climate talks in Glasgow has not been matched by significant cuts among major emitting nations. Neither China, India, nor Russia signed on to the U.S.-European Union pledge to reduce methane gas emissions by 30% by 2030.
I think a lot of people, including myself, are not very surprised.
Rena Tway of the Center for Global Sustainability at the University of Maryland says Beijing won't announce additional carbon cuts until it can meet its existing commitments. China is seeking self-sufficiency in renewables to maintain political stability, she says, noting that nearly half of its electricity production comes from coal.
Coal has come to an end in the energy system, but how to retire the existing large infrastructure is another challenge, because especially for a developing country like China, India, the coal fleet are much younger.
Like China, India is giving itself a longer ramp to transition away from fossil fuels. India's prime minister announced in Glasgow it is giving itself 50 years to achieve net zero emissions. The deadline is decades after that of many other countries. New Delhi argues it still has millions to lift out of poverty and has not polluted the planet for as long as the U.S. and Europe.
In the historical context, India is not a significant contributor. So its cumulative emissions stands at 3%.
Nilima Jain is an expert at India's energy sector at the Center for Strategic and International Studies.
It has been very vocal about not phasing out coal, and rightly so. Coal fuels 2/3 of India's power generation.
While developing nations remain wedded to coal, the pressure to develop reliable, affordable sources of renewable energy for all nations is only likely to increase going forward. Jessica Stone for VOA News, Washington.
And to speak about this further, we are joined by a Voice of America correspondent, Chris Casqueo from Washington. Hi, Chris. The United States and China surprised many observers by agreeing to partner on climate change as the COP26 summit ends. What are the next steps for the two countries? What is the road ahead looking like?
Good morning from Washington. U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese leader Xi Jinping are expected to hold a virtual summit on Monday. This week, the two countries issued a joint declaration to increase cooperation on climate change. Some of the main points: for the first time, China agreed to crack down on methane leaks. This follows the lead of the Biden administration and its efforts to curb the potent greenhouse gas. Beijing and Washington also agreed to share technology to reduce emissions, and they pledged to tackle illegal deforestation, enhance renewable energy generation, and speed up financial support for developing nations. But the declaration did not include specific dates or targets for these efforts. The declaration also said the U.S. and China will revive a working group that will meet regularly to address the climate change crisis and advance the multilateral process, focusing on enhancing concrete actions in this decade. Both Washington and Beijing intend to update the world on their new national targets for 2035 and 2025, a move that is particularly significant for China. The declaration stated China will make its best efforts to accelerate its plans to reduce coal consumption in the second half of this decade. They're not quite the firm commitments other world leaders hope for at COP26, but they represent progress.
Right. Chris, President Biden enjoyed a policy victory with the passage of the infrastructure bill, but his climate change plan hinges on another measure before the American lawmakers. How would that passage help further his agenda?
Right. Climate change is part of the larger $1.85 trillion spending package before lawmakers now. It includes $550 billion for climate change programs, mainly in the form of tax breaks to move Americans into electric vehicles and give incentives to power companies to move into renewable energy. The dollar amount would make it the largest effort to tackle climate change in U.S. history. Congressional leaders pushed back the vote on the spending package until later this month. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, a Democrat, remains uncommitted to voting for the measure. He actually suggests pushing off the vote until next year. He represents a state whose economy is largely dependent on coal. Republicans are unified in their opposition to the spending bill, which means Democrats cannot afford to lose any votes in the Senate, which is equally split between both parties 50-50.
Right. Stay with me, Chris. Let's also talk about the vaccine mandate in America, which continues to remain controversial after a federal court temporarily blocked compulsory vaccination. The Biden administration has responded that it has legal authority to mandate vaccinations at large workplaces or submit to weekly testings. VOA's Michelle Quinn getting us this detailed report.
Around the U.S., the fight over workplace rules requiring vaccination against COVID-19 is heating up. Some states, businesses, and religious groups sued, arguing the mandate is unconstitutional. The Biden administration argues it is necessary.
There are times where we recognize that our decisions have a broader effect on people around us. COVID has reminded us of that. And that's why having these types of requirements in workplaces will be not only helpful, but it's a necessary step to accelerate our pathway out of the pandemic.
The Biden administration says it's the responsibility of the federal government to create and enforce workplace safety rules. But some lawmakers say the COVID-19 mandate goes too far.
I don't think people want this decision yanked away from them. I don't think they want to allow a precedent where the federal government could come in and just force you to do what it wants you to do.
With more people signing up to get a shot every day, some question whether the federal rules, which will go into effect in January, are worth the struggle.
We need to ask ourselves, what is our goal? We vaccinated about 81% of adults over the age of 18. Where do we need to get to, and what price are we willing to pay in terms of cultural divide, acrimony, challenges?
While the number of new COVID-19 cases continues to decline in the U.S., an additional 70,000 cases are being recorded every day. Michelle Quinn, VOA News.
Let's go back across now to Voice of America's correspondent Chris Casqueo with us from Washington. Chris, the United States has approved the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccines for children as young as 5. How is the effort going so far?
Well, right now, the White House COVID-19 response team has reported this week that the U.S. children's vaccination program has delivered 900,000 first shots to children ages 5 through 11. With 700,000 additional appointments made at pharmacies around the country. Other countries that are currently vaccinating children 6 and older include China, Indonesia, Argentina, Cuba, Ecuador, El Salvador, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain. Overall, vaccinations among all U.S. age groups have averaged about 300,000 per day, the highest daily average in over a month. The White House also says about 25 million booster shots have been administered in the United States.
Also, the issue of vaccine hesitancy, which has been dominating headlines there, it remains a serious concern. There's also been a rise in the number of people looking for fake vaccination cards. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, cybersecurity specialists say there are thousands of social media accounts offering fake vaccination cards that promise to add vaccination records into electronic databases. But there isn't currently an electronic database for vaccination records in the U.S. Vaccine recipients fill out a piece of paper with their information and dates of inoculation. That's it. Experts say the number of fake vaccination card sellers went up tenfold after the U.S. government mandated federal workers get vaccinated. They say one possible solution is to develop a unified federal vaccination database and digital cards that verify vaccination status, something some European countries are already doing. Back to you.
Chris Casqueo, thanks very much for those updates. We're leaving it there for the moment. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of the WION VOA Co-Production. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.